Have you ever given consideration to how many inquiry calls your team misses? If you have you ever quantified how much this costs your organization? If you haven't, and you take a moment to do so, you'll probably be horrified, particularly when you take into consideration how valuable that income could be when invested in your team or the quality of service that they deliver. Today, I'm speaking to Lauren from Moneypenny, who has a call answering service for the care sector. In this episode, we talk about why you never have to miss a call and about the importance of making a great first impression. I'm Simon Parker, and this is the Care Leaders Network podcast. The context of today's podcast is missed calls equals missed opportunities. So Lauren, tell me, why do so many care organisations miss calls from care seekers?
I think, Simon, most of it's down to adequate resource in-house in care organisations. A lot of the time they will ask the caregivers to answer the calls amongst, many other jobs that they're doing day to day. So I think it's a lot of that they don't take into consideration everything else that they're doing, and the phone just becomes a bit of a back burner.
I can certainly say that from my experience of doing mystery shopper calls for care organisations back in my consultancy days, I've had some fairly interesting responses when I've called up care services to inquire. Some of them, of course, are brilliant. They're well thought through. They're managed correctly. They include great questions. There's follow up. There's next steps. All of that type of good stuff. But I'd say that there's more often than not, the experience can be clunky in some way, shape or form. And of course, there's a bit of a distribution there from the weird and wonderful all the way through to the absolutely fantastic, really engaging and super, super helpful. Of course, any care organisation is going to aspirationally want their ability to answer calls to be great, but I think the reality is oftentimes it's just not the case.
Yeah, I completely agree. There is businesses out there that have heavily invested in the first initial impression in the first call that takes place to their business. They might have set up a specific sales line that goes through to a dedicated sales team or to one of the home managers, for example, that's got all of the right tools in place to be able to handle that correctly. However, there is a huge number of businesses still out there that it is going through to the homes, and as lovely and as wonderful the caregivers are, and they, the business wouldn't be able to run without them, they're not necessarily the right people to handle the first impression call. We've only got around about 5 seconds to make a first impression on someone and actually make it count. So I think it's really important that they are looking at a bigger picture to say, well, what happens when someone calls my business? Are we there? Are we present? Are we friendly? Are we professional? Would someone want to buy from us? I think all of them questions are really important, and the mystery shopping exercise is great because that's where you get the real results.
Definitely. And it's almost a cliche, isn't it, about the first impressions count? Of course they do. It's impossible to forget that. Let's be honest, the people working in care organizations, sales isn't their predominant reason for wanting to work in a care organization, and they've got, like, in a practical sense, they're there to look after people in that care service. It's not their core competency to be able to get them to that really, really well-trained standard where they're answering the phone really, really well, really, really professionally, again, creating all of that engagement and that intrigue, and having all of the process that's included in it. So just from a practical standpoint, having people working in the care services answer the phone, it creates it pulls them away from the job that they're fundamentally meant to be doing. And of course, if they do end up doing it, the likelihood is, if they haven't had really, really clear training around it, it could be a a missed opportunity, of course, as well. So I guess we're kind of alluding to this already, but why would you say that care providers do need to be more strategic when it comes to their approach to call handling?
I think it links back to what we were earlier saying in terms of that first impression as well, and be more strategic in terms of if I made a call today and I got the response that is currently in place, would I want my loved one to join that care home or join that care organization and be cared for by that person? I think it's really, people buy from people. So I think it's really important that you look at, actually, is that person representing my brand? Are they asking the right questions? Are they answering the questions in the correct way? So I think when strategically, not even just from a lead generation point of view, but actually the brand of their business. So I think brand alignment along with everything else is so important.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's having that consistency and that brand alignment, as you put it, I think is of paramount importance. And also as well, there are of course care organizations that do a fantastic job of this, but I'd say it's probably the exception rather than rule. There's a whole body of work that almost needs to be done across the sector. And I recently had a chat with another one of the supply partners at the Care Leaders Network about this as well. I think one of the things that social care really struggles with is, and that's at a macro level, is the brand of social care. I don't think that the public, that society really gets social care, and often it gets a bad rap, people have a bad perspective on it a lot of the time. And I think there's reasons for that, and there's people that can be that maybe to a certain extent are culpable. But I do think that marketing as a whole, because it hasn't traditionally been, it hasn't had to be traditionally an important part of the way that care organisations have been run. I think in today's world, it's ever increasingly important. And I think if people have not such great interactions and touch points with care organizations as they go through their care seeker journey, it perpetuates that narrative that the care sector is bad, or that it hasn't got its act together, or fill in the blank, whatever people's beliefs might be. And again, coming back to the cliche of first impressions counting, often if people are ringing a care service, it's because they've done some research, something's piqued their interest, whether it be the location, the CQC rating, the whatever else it might be. This is the first person to person interaction that they might have, and it's either going to validate their reasons for wanting to call in the first place, or it's going to make people feel, I guess, at worst case scenario, people could be left feeling alienated in their care seeker journey, which is, from their perspective, of course, it's such an emotive journey for people to be going on, to not have that warmth and that compassion and the being able to give the clear understanding about what it means to be a care seeker and what it takes to undergo that journey, and what support can be put into place, and how you can help somebody maybe move into a care home or whatever the other type of care services is. It really creates a sense of confidence and trust for that care seeker to make sure that initial touch point, that first conversation, is managed at its in the best possible way for that context.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our clients that we speak to are spending so much money on marketing, so getting people to their website, having that lead generation, but then not having the support of the telephone answering side backed up with it, because actually getting people to your website from a marketing point of view is going to generate more calls to your business, but actually the top gripe for people is that the call isn't answered at all. So they're spending all of this money getting people to the website, getting people to call their business, but they're not looking at the other end of things. So actually, are we spending all this money and there's someone there to be able to generate that lead even further and turn it into ROI essentially? So I think it's really important that is the call even being answered? That's the thing. I met with a few companies at an event I went to last week, and I said to one gentleman, so what happens when someone calls your business? And he said, no one answers. No one ever picks up because everyone's always really busy. And I think we know that the care sector is struggling from a recruitment point of view. But actually that really shows when you try and call a business, because they're not answering, essentially because they are all busy. We know that they're, have got so many job roles to take on. It actually becomes the phone becomes bottom down the list, but it's the phone and channels like phone and live chat, for example, that are going to generate you more business and help you grow your business as well. So I think everyone just needs to look at it from an outsider's point of view.
And that also perpetuates that nobody picked up, or when somebody did pick up, it was a bit kind of not an optimal experience. That perpetuates that negative perspective that's held about social care as a whole. So there's the kind of I call it micro, makes it sound unimportant, but the kind of the micro view of on a service by service basis, and then you've got the macro view of how the care sector is actually perceived on a nationwide basis. All these little things add up. It's compound. These things compound over time, and all care organisations do have a responsibility to look after their own brand, but then of course to look after the brand of the care sector because of the challenges that it has faced in the past. And I just to jump back on something really important that you highlighted, like these are your prospective new customers. These are people who will present revenue generating opportunities, particularly where let's say it's a privately funded resident, maybe for an older people's service. That could be £50,000 a year worth of revenue. If you're not picking up those calls, you're missing those opportunities for revenue generation. And in a world where the bottom line of care organizations has been massively impacted by the cost of living, by the cost of the workforce, by everything basically going up. I can't think of it. It's something that's improved in price over the last kind of 2 or 3 years. The only lever that you can pull to make sure that your margin isn't being eroded and fundamentally the sustainability of your care organization is top line growth. So missing those top line growth opportunities is of paramount importance. And yes, it might take an investment, but the point is that the juice is worth the squeeze, right? To your point, you go and spend all that money on marketing, you go and make sure that people are making inquiries, and then you're almost failing at the last hurdle. You might as well have not spent the money in the first place if there's nobody there to be able to take that call and to begin the process of managing that care seeker inquiry. And of course, with the intention of that person, the care seeker or the family member of the care seeker moving into that care service or benefiting from that home care service or fill in the blank, whatever type provision that it might be. So I feel like there's been something that's always been suggested within the care sector, where if you just look after the care, the business side of things looks after itself. And not that I don't believe that that's true to an extent, but I certainly think that was probably true in the past. But today, as it stands with the economic scenario that we find ourselves in today, you need to look after your business, the commerciality of your care organization, almost just as much as you need to make sure that you're looking after people, because the interplay in between those two worlds is important. And let's be honest, there's a lot of people looking to exit the sector. There's an awful lot of people looking to sell their care organizations. There's an awful lot of people who are falling into troubled times, maybe not being able to make loan repayments or any of this type of stuff within the sector. And coming back to my earlier point, and it's because they're having their margins eroded by not really focusing on those top line growth opportunities, which it's a sad set of circumstances, but that will be the downfall, unfortunately, of some care organizations, because they haven't managed to get to a point where they're managing that first impression, where a proportion of those will end up converting and being beneficiaries of the care that's being delivered. So you can tell I'm kind of up on my soapbox a little bit on this, as it's an important subject. So I hope that people heed the message that we're sharing today, because it's bigger than just missing calls. Of course, there are far more widespread implications of not managing that process correctly.
I think people are learning, and they are wanting to go into more of the digital age side of things as well. I think there's only a few people that we speak to that still say on paper trails when it comes to kind of log in the leads and the different calls that come into their business. But I think, like you said, it's not, it is about the care, absolutely, the care that you give, and the service that they receive from an in-house point of view is 100% really, really important. It only takes, one bad experience for someone to write a negative review, and that's all over social media these days for people to see. But I think it's also looking from a business element of it, of, am I in control of what's coming into my business? So do I know exactly how many calls are coming into my business, where them calls are coming from, and where people are hearing about us to know what marketing is working? Not a lot of people have access to that data. Not a lot of people have CRMs in place either. So I think they are more going into that space of, we need to be able to track this. We need to be able to see what's working and what isn't working for our business. So we're seeing that more and more, that people are moving into that space, and wanting to take it more seriously. But I do agree with you, there's a whole other business element side to it as well that people need to think about.
You are right, and people could easily see, I guess, the context of what we're talking about now, and think that maybe we're being kind of overly negative about the kind of the state of play at the moment. I think, just to flip maybe that perception on its head, you're absolutely right. The care sector as a whole, I think, is undergoing a rapid transformation, and more people are becoming more digitally savvy. They're becoming more mindful of their sales and marketing processes, because they need to, but because they recognise the importance of doing so. I guess it's just making sure for those people who are the care leaders out there who are unsure, or that haven't started the journey yet, or that maybe need some persuading that this is the right direction of travel. Now is the time to begin the process, in whatever context that might look like. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do from a sales and marketing perspective that are going to carry weight, and they're going to help with that top line growth. The most important thing is that you start, and that you learn, and that you iterate, and that you look for further opportunities. Because I mean, that's just, I read somewhere on, I think it was like a LinkedIn meme or something like that, from an extremely well-known, reputable CMO, so Chief Marketing Officer of an exciting, I think it was a sports tech company or something along those lines, basically suggesting that anyone in marketing who thinks they've got it all organized and then they know exactly what they're doing is lying, because everyone in sales and marketing, to a certain extent, is making it up as they go along, because the market changes, the dynamics of what's going on within an organization might change. There are some key fundamentals that are really, really worthwhile exploring and implementing in any care organization, or any other organization for that matter. But the how it's actually done, and the tweaking and the iterating and all that type of stuff is that's just part of the process. So there's no panacea, there's no silver bullet that's going to make all of the difference. It's a case of making sure that you've got your sales and marketing infrastructure correctly set up, and the important thing to note is to make sure that the positive steps are being made in the direction of making sure that infrastructure is set up, that it's working correctly, that you're getting good quality feedback, and enabling you to be able to iterate over time, to drive top line revenue, to make sure that your margins aren't being eroded, and to make sure that you've got a remarkable care organization, which is that's why these people go into business and set these organizations up in the first place. It's to make sure that they can build remarkable care organizations and deliver remarkable care.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, though, they go into this business because they're the type of people that want to help people, and that's exactly, you know, what these people are in this sector for, is to help people. So I think that as long as you've got the care aspect 100% right, then you can move on to looking at the more sales and marketing side of things. So what do I want people to think when they come across my website? What do I think people want to think when they come across my brand, me as a person? So it's all goes hand in hand together. I completely agree with you that people are looking at it more from a top line point of view. So actually, you know, how much revenue is coming to the business? What am I doing to generate that? What can we do more of? But no one's got it all figured out. We all have to start somewhere. So I think starting somewhere, such as what happens when someone calls my business, is a great place to start.
Definitely. Talk to me about recruitment. Recruitment's obviously a massive challenge for all care organisations. Obviously, again, some are doing better than others, but it's certainly hard. Yeah. How can first impressions over the phone aid recruitment as a whole? Because I think that's a really, really, well, it's one of the most important things that care leaders are thinking about as it stands today. And I know that there are some real positive implications for making sure that that first impression is absolutely nailed.
I think it works very, very similar to a care seeker in terms of wanting to use your service. When someone calls your business wanting to work with you, it's, do I want to work for this person who's answering the phone? Do I want to work closely with them? Do I want to work with that organisation? How am I treated through the process of wanting to apply for a job within that business? We know that amongst other sectors, but you know, the care sector at the moment is extremely suffering with the recruitment side of things. And I think that comes down as well to a big shift after COVID, in terms of it's more of a candidate's world than it is a client's world. So I think there's so many jobs available within care that candidate has got the opportunity to call around several different care businesses and have their pick of which job that they want to take up. So I think if you look at every single process from start to finish of that, and be at the forefront of people's minds, I think they're more likely then to choose you as a business over someone else.
And it's been described to me as a battle out there when it comes to you know, anything that you can do to positively contribute to your recruitment endeavors has to be worthwhile considering. And again, it's that, I know we keep on banging on about the cliche of first impressions, but that's it. To your point, it's equally as applicable when it comes to the care seeker journey as it is to the care deliver prospective recruitment journey as well. So I'd say one thing that I'm interested in exploring is, where do people go wrong? Like, talk to me about the mistakes that people commonly make when trying to make sure that they make the best first impressions over the phone, but maybe where you see people not performing at the standard that they could do. So it's getting really, really clear around where, I guess, where the common mistakes are, and then kind of highlighting, okay, so this is what that looks like from an opportunity perspective.
I think common mistakes that are made is maybe not actually making that mystery shopping call that we were talking about earlier, and actually hearing it from an outsider's point of view. A lot of businesses that you call might have long hold music, they might have long wait times on the line, and that, I think, going back to why that person's got in touch, you know, say if something happened to my mother or my grandmother the night before, and I'm picking up that phone the first thing in the morning, it's already a really hard decision for me to pick up that phone. I'm kind of admitting that we need some help as a family. And if I'm then waiting on hold for a long period of time, or there's some really cheery music on the line and I'm not really in that mood. So I think it's looking at everything, from why, you know, that person's got in touch because of this reason. So are we actually giving them the right empathy that they need, and understanding why they've got in touch that day as well, I think is really important from that point of view.
I think that empathy thing is really, really key. I think if you're undergoing a care seeker journey yourself, it's highly emotive. People are really, really stressed when they go through this process. So having a compassionate person that one can speak to as they undergo that process, just being kind to people as they explore that the journey and start to fact find and understand the kind of the research and things like that. It's almost like that's the first characteristic that should be displayed. That's the kind of predominant characteristic that needs to be displayed as well, because of the level of emotion that is that the care seeker is likely to be experiencing at that point as well. So how would you say that that care organizations can improve their first impressions when it comes to call handling? What are the key things that they need to know to make sure that they are nailing it, if they're choosing to do that if they're choosing to do that themselves?
So I think the main outcome when people are making a call to businesses, they want to feel valued. So they want to make sure that they've had sufficient enough time to get across why they've got in touch, why they're getting in touch that day. So I think starting from the very, very beginning and analysing everything would make the whole load of difference. So what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the objections for people? And what is the outcome that we can do to change it all? And I think, when we look about being valued, if we go back to what we've mentioned very, very first of all, caregiver, they've got so many different things to do, and they're probably picking that call up in between visit, going from room to room, or they're on the way to get something, they've picked up the phone. Whereas if I was wanting to contact a business about something like that, I would want the time and effort and the like we said, empathy, that call might take 10 minutes, it might take 20 minutes, that person might be upset on the call. So actually, I think putting a really robust, strategic, go back to what we said earlier, process in place in terms of when someone calls my business for a new care inquiry, what are we doing with that call? Where do we want that to go to? So in an ideal world, do we want that to go to the manager of the home? Do we want to set up a direct sales team that are trained in handling these calls, to be able to give that person all of the information they need, but also all of the time that they need to be able to get everything across? I think looking at that, there's so many clients of ours that have just home numbers, dedicated home numbers. They don't necessarily have a sales line, which is absolutely fine. But even putting something on the line, such as an auto attendant, that says if you're looking for new care, press 1, and that then can be routed to someone more dedicated to handling them calls. So I think, like I said, so what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, your objections, what's the outcome that you want to achieve, and that's a really good starting point.
Lauren, today obviously we've been talking about missed calls equaling missed opportunities. I feel like we've dug into this subject very, very nicely, and you've shared some brilliant insight. So I really, really appreciate your time today. Again, just to double underline our point from today's conversation, it's just making sure that progress is being made from a marketing and from a sales perspective more broadly, and then highlighting the importance of making sure that calls are being answered and that they're being answered effectively because of the positive implications from a top line revenue generating opportunity perspective. So really, really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge on this subject matter.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.